Hello, hello. Welcome to the Bike Here podcast. I'm your host, Arlie Greenwald, and on this podcast and video series, we are helping you bike more and worry less with the goal of leaving the car at home a little bit more often. This podcast is powered and sponsored by Tern Bicycles, my employer, and, well, the theme of today's episode. We're going to be talking with Josh Hahn, my friend and team captain of Tern. The interview that you're about to watch or listen to was actually done the fall of 2020 before I started full-time with Tern. And we were talking about the new GSD, the newest, greatest cargo bike that is hitting retailers' doors right now. And I kind of held on to this podcast and video because I wanted it to land as bikes were landing. And if you didn't know, there's been a lot of port congestion and just things slowing down shipping right now. So I'm so extremely excited to be sharing this episode with you as Josh and I just dig into what it takes to redesign an award-winning bike in the Tern GSD, which is the electric cargo bike in the Tern lineup of wonderful bikes that really fit in your life and help you bike more and worry less. So without further ado, let's bring that episode up of talking with Josh Hahn. If you haven't read the news, I am now working with Tern in a full-time capacity here in North America. I'll make sure to link to that in the show notes, but just disclaiming that before we have this conversation, because Josh, I'm so excited about having this conversation about the new GSD and what your team went through to reimagine an award-winning bike. Like, I can't imagine kind of rethinking something that's already working so well for you guys. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Arlie. And we are so happy to have you on the team. We're psyched.
Yeah, I didn't wear the standard issue black t-shirt. So Josh, your team is spread out across the world. And as a dealer, I came to love working with Tern because you care and you listen. So from your standpoint, talk to me about like delivering the GSD, right? It was so different to market. And then bringing it around to like, how do you decide to update a bike? And like, what does your team go through to get to that point?
Well, I think, roughly speaking, we try and create a frame platform, and it runs for 3 years. So we try and update it every 3 years. The GSD was updated after 2 years, and it was necessitated by Bosch, basically going to the Gen 4 system. Chain rings had to get bigger, so that meant that we had to move batteries around, and so that means we had to redesign the whole frame. And something about bikes, bike industry people know this, right? But the things on the bike, the features get frozen, a year before it goes into production. So, through that process, right, where you're testing, you find things, the feature set is frozen, but you find things, we should have done this, or we should have done that. Oh, this could have been better. And if you are disciplined, the team is like, no, it's frozen, because we have to go through all of these steps for testing and validation, and then jigs, and then you have to pass it off to the factory to manufacture, and then you have pilot run. And so you have all these steps that you have to do. And so if I say, 9 months before production, hey, this thing's not good enough, could we change it? The rest of the team is like, no, man, sorry, unless you want to delay the project. So basically, coming, after 2 years or 3 years, really, we just had a really long list of things we wanted to improve. And then there are things that we don't think of, right? There are things that Arlie, you think of, or Elsbeth thinks of, or Davey thinks of, right? So Davey was on us from the beginning, right, about the kickstand. He's like, hey man, this kickstand, it should be better. It could be better. What can you do to make it better? And so, I mean, there are just so many things. And so, after 3 years, we end up, and, our customers also mention things that we hadn't thought of. So, we have this long list of 150 things or 300 things that we'd like to improve. Some of them are not possible or too expensive or too difficult to implement, but there are a whole bunch of things that we can do. And so we just took this huge long list of things we wanted to improve. And right, I mean, GSD was, it's a version 1.0 product. And so, as with the original iPhone, right, you can do a lot, given time to improve it. So that's what we did with the new GSD, and now we're out of ideas.
I have maybe been riding the new Gen 2 GSD for 3 weeks, and even as a cargo bike specialist, where I've spent so much time on these bikes, there are these little things that you guys add, right? Like, I remember the first time I reviewed a Vectron, and like, oh, they thought about this little detail in the rack. And I'm interested to hear from you. There's so many bike brands that if they have a successful product, they just keep making it. Maybe they change the colors, they update the shifting, and I realize Bosch kind of pushed part of it, but you really could have just taken what you had and updated the motor mount and called it good. It was a great price point. It was selling really well. Add a new color this year and you could probably sell more of them. So from your standpoint, like, why, or maybe the question is how do you guys get into these like details of, like, you iterate and iterate and iterate, but like, from my standpoint, it's like you guys went inside my head and realized all the things I need without me knowing I needed it.
Well, we're kind of proud of that, and the cool thing is, like, with the launch, right? You pick the 5 most interesting features and you talk about those 5, but actually there's a list of 150 things that we know we did, but the rest of the world won't know until you actually get the bike and you start to ride it. So we're actually really excited to get the bikes out there. And I would say it's the process is very simple. We are users. That's it. We're users, and it's not, one person's a user or the product manager is a user. It's most of us in the company working on the bike we ride that bike regularly. So that includes our head of product design, Yo-Yo in Finland. That includes Eric in Taiwan. He's head of bike engineering. That includes me. So most days, 50% of the time, I'm commuting to work on a GSD. I switch off. So yesterday it was a BYB to work, GSD on the way back, and so I switch bikes. But I think, if you approach product development as a user, right, then you are improving the product because you want these improvements. So that includes all of the little things. It's even the panniers. The original panniers, they were pretty good. They're pretty big, but every time I have to use 4 hooks on each side, and then times 2, that's 8 hooks. And I tend to throw my back out easily. So I don't like leaning way over to try and like hook something down low. So how can we eliminate steps? So my challenge to our accessory designer was, I want fewer steps. Like, just count the number of steps it takes me to use this thing, which is like close this bag. Like if I have, 2 bags of groceries and I want to get 2 bags of groceries into this pannier and then close it, how many steps does it take me? Reduce the number of steps, right? So obviously 4 hooks, and then the hooks, sometimes you miss them. So you're doing this, right? And it annoys all of us. You never talk about it in marketing, right? But it annoys the heck out of, me when I'm like bent over trying to hook a thing and it doesn't go in. So how do we do that? Okay, well, let's spend some money on a fidlock, magnetic closure. And instead of 4 hooks, you now have 2 magnetic closures. And instead of, the hooks being down low where you have to bend over, let's put them up higher where they're a lot more easy to access. So it's things like that. I think that's a lot of times what's missed in product development, is that if you are not a user, if you don't come at it from a place where like I really care because I'm using it for myself and my family, then you will not get the key details. And I think you can actually see that from a lot of the products that are out there. You can see who really cares and who really uses it, right? So my example is Ortlieb. Like you look at these Ortlieb bags that are evolved and refined, and you're just thinking like every damn person in Ortlieb is riding to work in rain, heavy rain every day, and they're making these tweaks, and that's why the product is so good, because they're using it. And then you see other products where people just miss really obvious kind of user things, and you go, okay, that's just there's some PM who doesn't really care, and they're developing something, but they're missing the key points. So I think if that's how we do it, is we encourage everybody to ride. So we have a bike to work program at the company, where basically if you commit to riding to work, you get a free Tern bike to ride. So that's been updated to include all the e-bikes, and so we've got lots of people riding in on e-bikes as well. So yeah.
Something you said, Josh, actually is what I felt is so different with Tern, and that's that you guys are designing products to solve issues or problems, instead of just oh, there's a new Shimano derailleur out this year, so we need to spec a bike that accommodates that. And it's something that sits with me because the ethos of your company is not like building these sexy bikes that are for your wall or for a group ride. It's really solving everyday problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes we get dinged on aesthetics, and our head designer gets really annoyed when he hears that, and he's like, I've got this to fit in, this to fit in, this to fit in, this to fit in. These are all like stuck onto the wall. These are hard parameters. What else do you want me to, like? There's not much. But you know what? And our defense is that, look, we're trying to fit Ortlieb panniers and lights, and then you have to have a kickstand, and the kickstand has to be wide enough to be stable, but yet it has to clear the chain, and like there's a million things that just and we're trying to do all of this in a small space, right? The GSD is the length of a regular bicycle, and so we're trying to cram a ton of functionality into this small space. I mean, we could just stretch it out by another foot, and then hey, everything, it's easy, everything fits. But no. And so some I think I think there are a lot of people who have said this, but right, form follows function. So we are definitely a company where, look, who's the customer? That's where we start. Who's the customer? What are they trying to do? Right? What problems are they trying to solve? And then that's the function that we want in this product that we're making. And then after that, okay, let's try and make it look good also. But definitely making it look good is last. Making it work right for that customer comes first always for us.
That's brilliant. That's a great way to put it. From your standpoint, do you think we're going to continue to see like what, especially in the US, right? Like the US, we're so sport driven that we have a vision in our head of bikes, probably like a 10-speed Schwinn. And, you know, I see a lot of bikes, especially in Europe, that just look different because they fit a different use. And do you see from your like crystal ball, do you see that idea changing for the US of, you know, what biking looks like and what the bike should be to suit the need?
Yes, I think we're definitely seeing it. I think you're seeing it. I mean, it's starting. I think it's starting in pockets, right? So Denver, Seattle, San Francisco now, right? It's been that way in New York. We're I think it's starting in the urban areas, but we're definitely seeing um, how people view bicycles very differently. You know, when I got into the bike industry, 20, 28 years ago, and I left the Bay Area, right? So I was working in high tech, you know, and when I told my friends, "Hey, I'm going to go work on bikes," everybody was like, "Really? Bikes? Really?" Um, and you know, at that time, you know, when I was young, when you were 16, you know, you know, you're a junior in high school, you needed your driver's license, and if you were cool, you had a nice car. If you were less cool, you had a not so nice car, like me. But you needed to have a car, right? And everybody needed to have a car. And I think that's right. We've seen that change completely. I remember we had a used car, and we offered it to my wife's nephew, and he was like, "No thanks." And we were just like, "Really? We're just giving you a free car?" And it's like, "No thanks. Don't need the hassle. Don't need the bother." Um, and right, I think that's changed for so many people now, right? You live in an urban center, parking's hard. You don't need all of that extra costs associated with gas and car insurance. Um, and you know, so whether it's public transport and Uber and cycling, some combination of that, I think people are really happy. And so we're definitely seeing it. Um, right, it's not yet hit all of the U.S., uh, but
We
it's
like our
starting in these urban.
cars and we have lots of
Yes.
land.
But I'll tell you a story I just heard yesterday, actually. So my best friend from high school, um, I got him a Vectron. He lives in San Francisco. I got him a Vectron last year, and so he's been riding to and from. He's taking classes. Um, his wife works in city government um, in San Francisco, and she is not a bike person, like not at all. Christine, if you're hearing this, sorry, not a bike person. But my friend told me, he said, "Hey, you know, she's now riding the Vectron uh, to and from work a couple of times a week, um, and it's a couple of things. I think it started because it was just pure. It's faster and more convenient than driving a car, right? So they live in a. I mean that ride to work through downtown SF is brutal in the morning. But I think, you know, he said that she now enjoys the feeling of getting that exercise as well. And so, you know, we're seeing it like this person who, you know, none of us would consider a bike person is now a bike person. And so, you know, step at a time, it makes us feel great to hear these stories happening everywhere.
I had a lot of those customers transform with the HSD,
Mm.
because it was easy to look at, easy to ride, low weight, and they justified it by saying, well, I can share it with somebody else in my family,
Mm.
where instead of just, one dedicated e-bike for me.
Mm.
So Josh, just kind of digging into the GSD, if you had to pick 4 favorite features on the new GSD, what would they be?
Um, I think the handling, that's something you've mentioned. So yes, last night my wife and I were riding GSD Gen 1 and GSD Gen 2 home. Um, the handling is just so much more confident, like you've said. So I mean, it's even things like turning around to tell the kids, "Hey, stop fighting," or or signaling. Right? Stability is so important, and there are some bikes that are not so stable when you ride, with one hand. So the stability, the handling of the bike, that's a combination of the geometry. It's the suspension fork, right? It's the upright riding position. I think that's probably the biggest thing for me. Um, I think the slightly longer rear rack and the accessories that go on it. So we were just a little bit squished, with 2-yep child seats, and so we just lengthened it by, I think, about 7 centimeters. So a lot of stuff fits better. We've got some fairly exciting new accessories that are coming out for that rear rack. I'm so incredibly excited about these accessories that are soon to be announced, because I
This will
think they
post
transform.
after the 10th, just so you know.
Okay. So the Storm Box and the Storm Shield, I think that'll transform how the bike is used and the weather in which it's used. So, my son he's 15 now, and I think I'm just going to keep a clubhouse and a Storm Box on the back of the bike, and I'm going to tell him to climb in from the back, actually. I'm going to tell him to climb in because I want that massive trunk that's rain protected. And I'm going to keep my helmet, my rain jacket, extra shoes, lock. I'm just going to keep all of that in the trunk. So I think that transforms how a long-tail bike can be used. So I'm super excited about that.
I would agree. As a front-loading fan, I feel like it took a lot of that, like, feeling that I can just toss stuff in
Yes.
and, put it on a mid-tail cargo bike. And here in Denver, it has snowed a few times, and just having a little bit more weather protection, especially for my little one who doesn't keep anything on himself. I think, my prediction are we'll probably see people trying to retrofit that on other bikes.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense for mid or long tail bikes. I think the other thing, I would say the new Bosch motor is is a nice improvement as well. I think it's quieter. There's less friction. There's more power. I think that just the software in terms of how the assistance comes in is much more refined, so it feels even more natural. The original was pretty good also already. So the Bosch motor, um, I don't know. I think I really enjoy every time I ride the new bike. I enjoy the lights, like the new lights with the high and low beams. Um, but even as an example, right? So I think maybe you mentioned it. Maybe switching the high and low beams. Was that you who mentioned it? How the buttons are oriented. So there's something on our list for the next time we update the bike, right? It's even.
Or Josh sends me a bike to try it. I'm like, here are all the things that I just kind of nothing was, I just moved them. And,
Yeah,
what's fun for me though, is first as like consumer and then a dealer and now working with you, like you're one of the few brands that truly listen. And when I say listen, like there are many brands that are just holding on to some successful product because it's so expensive to retool. And because of that, they're so guarded because they can't change things or they don't want to, or it's not in their plan. And you guys start a Facebook group just for people to get together and talk about the bikes, and you actually hear what they're saying and ask questions, and if you need to, you take it offline to talk to them. And I see in the bike, improvements that directly correlate to like feedback that I saw you guys talking about. And that to me is just such a different place from the bike industry. Typically
yeah,
it's like, here's the brand living behind a wall and I'm your dealer, and the only way to talk to anyone over there is through me.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think the way we look at it is, look, we're creating things that are new and that are original. And there's only so many, we're not a huge team. There are only so many things we can think of. And there are plenty of experts out there, right? That whether that's you or Davey, Genevieve, right? I mean, she's an expert. So we would be silly to think that, hey, we're kind of the be all end all of expertise and knowledge about this product. And why wouldn't we go and get all this amazing, feedback on the product for how to improve it? I think, I think for me, the last thing, now I almost forgot it, that I think is great about the GSD is the kickstand.
That's my number one. Like,
Yeah,
I got the bike and I'm like, oh, this just needs to be, the brake lights and the lock stand just need to be standard on anything that you're transporting other humans on.
yeah, so the kickstand is, it's integrated. It's quite stable. Uh, the locking feature, that was a late thing that our designer proposed. We were already pretty far into the project, and he was like, well, we could make it lock also. And we were just like, what? Locking? He's like, yeah. And but then we're like, okay. And then he went to a hardware store, bought a lock, and he's like, look, you could do it like this. And then we're like, oh my God, that's going to increase the price so much. And then he, then we're, down the path of adding the lock, and then you could make it cable actuated. And we're like, oh my God, more cost.
It's funny. I have a lot of bikes. I mean, that's why I had to open a bike shop. And this, but my wife is my litmus test, right? She rides bikes, but she is not a die-hard cyclist, right? And my goal in life is like, how do I remove as much friction as possible? And if I can get her riding, then I can get most people riding. And she tried the lock stand, and it was just this mind-blowing moment because we have a 5-year-old, bless her heart, she's a saint, and we have a 2.5-year-old that's just so active. And just to know that even though he's going crazy, like literally he tries to rock the bikes off. And knowing that I don't have to like put a tow strap on the front wheel or anything like that, like he's secure. And I've tried it, like I have yanked that thing off. Or in the garage when like my daughter accidentally bumps a cargo bike, I've had one almost fall on her. And that's terrifying as a parent. So like now they're all kind of tucked away.
Yes.
But it was just one of those, like, was it Eric? Who was the designer?
No, it was Joachim was the main,
Oh, yes.
the main guy.
I'm gonna send him an email. Like, thank you.
Yeah. No,
because to me, like, there's a lot of people have asked me, like, is it worth upgrading from the current GSD? And I'll ask, like, are you comfortable on the current GSD? They say, like, I'm a little bit too leaned over, a little bit cramped, I'll say, okay, you should try the new one. Or, I'm starting to carry my kids more. And I'm like, oh, you need to try this lag stand.
Well, you know what though? We're not done with that kickstand. We've got more stuff
Yes. Just
coming. That
the kickstand that just keeps giving. And
w-
if you live
yeah,
in,
we're
it's what's funny is the non-cargo bikers that are listening to this are like, why are they going on and on about a kickstand? But to me, the kickstand potentially could make or break a good cargo bike. And, I've had front loaders that have been awful with, just having to pick up that much weight. And so a good, solid, trustworthy kickstand that's not hard to, take on and off. To me, it's probably worth $500 to $1,000. Like I would, if I had to like put two bikes side to side, and I won't name names, but basically since your Atlas kickstand came out for the original GSD, I have not sold another acronym mid-tail cargo bike. And it's solely based off, they like both, and then the kickstand just does it.
mm, mm. Yeah, I mean the kickstand. I mean, sometimes we talk about the rolling jackass, which is a great kickstand, right? Great function. I mean, it just really works well, but it's also fairly expensive. And but the fact that people are willing to pay $400 for kickstand, makes you realize that, well, we need to be willing to put some money and design time into this, and make it really good. So yeah, the kickstand, we've still got some stuff coming, that we think is pretty good. So it just took a little longer to get it done, but yeah, we're still working on accessories for the GSD. So we're not done yet.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Josh, I think one of the last things I want to talk about is the line growth for the GSD. And however much you want to talk about this, but originally you had the S10 and the S00, and now you have 4 models. So, could you talk about either what went through everybody's brain to grow the models that much, or, where you, to me, it just shows that you see that much opportunity to sell,
Yeah.
which is exciting for me.
I think, again, we look at it from from the user's perspective. What do we think users want? And our own feelings also factor in. So I think the R14 with the roll-off system, that was Eric going, hey, we could do this. And I think my initial reaction was, what? You kidding? That's gonna be crazy expensive. And sometimes he just ignores me and goes ahead and builds up prototypes, knowing that after I write it, if the reaction is positive, it's like, okay, let's figure out how to make this work. So I think that was, I think, we always thought the R14 is this halo bike. It has everything that we can think of, if money were no object. Um, and we would all enjoy riding that bike ourselves. And we think there would be some people that, I remember actually it was Davey quite a few years ago. He was saying with the original GSD, he said, if you just stick a roll off in this, keep it under 6,000 and you'd sell a boatload of these. And so that also made me think, okay, well, even if it's fairly expensive, there will be demand. And then, you also do some research, and, Reese Mueller's selling quite a few. Our German distributor has a different model with roll off, and they're doing pretty well also. So, so from a business case, it's not like we would sell 5 or 10 pieces, but that there's actually some demand for this. And we've seen that borne out. I mean, so I think all of the roll-off bikes they're all spoken for. I mean, globally.
That's what I was going to say. Well, and
yeah,
for me as like an original GSD owner, it's like, I know I love this bike and I want one that's going to be long lasting and sexy and just, like, all right, I proved my point, right? And it did its thing, and now I want to upgrade. And yeah, you guys did really well with that. Like, I think the color is nice, the anodizing, just all the little pieces. And it price wise, it's actually a great price for the bike. So good job.
Thank you. I mean, it's not a cheap bike. It's fairly expensive, but if you think of it as hey, we don't need a second, we don't need a second car, and we're going to be riding this for school drop off and shopping, and it's a replacement for that second car. That cost makes a lot more sense.
And for me, as somebody that rides mostly NVolo and roll off, if I'm looking at a long-term investment, roll off is definitely the direction I'm headed.
Yeah, I mean and anybody who hears the price is has sticker shock, but you ride that bike, and I think Elsbeth said it really well. She's like, look, if you're using the product every single day, that cost is amortized pretty well. And like literally every day when I get on that bike and I start shifting it around, I just think, man, this thing is so awesome, right? And so if a bike like that is within your budget and you're using it a ton, right, the bike does make sense because the system is so smooth, right? The shifting is so smooth, it feels efficient, it's just effortless. And I actually do enjoy shifting, compared to like a NVolo automatic where you don't shift at all. I actually like the up and down shifting.
Yes, I unfortunately for myself did not pre-order one, but my plan is to order it for when we move, which is not until next summer. So the other thing that happened with your models was that you have the S10, but now you have this LX feature, and can you talk me through like, where did that come from? And
well, this is, I think we have a lot of debates, on our product team, and sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. I lose fairly often, and I'm okay losing as long as the other party is right most of the time. And so we have these strong debates, and so our Eric, actually, our head bike guy, he wanted to get these premium lights onto the bike, and I thought, it's gonna drive our price point up by too much, right? We were at $39.99 last year. Going up by $500 is, I think that's about as much as we want to go. But you stick these lights on plus a 500 watt hour battery, then you're making $1,000 jump, which is too much. So we ended up with this kind of compromise where, all right, let's offer it to our distributors and let them choose, right? Because you have currency issues, and so you're not always hitting these clean price points. So that was our compromise. So that was him kind of winning that argument and just slipping it in. But I think the lights, they make a huge difference, right? It's a phenomenally bright light. I love being able to toggle the high beams, especially for people coming the other way that have their like flashlights set horizontal on their handlebars. I like to flash them, go, hey dude, there are other riders on this bike path. So yeah, we like those lights a lot.
Yeah, that's another, is it worth the upgrade question? And I get a lot. And I actually just yesterday took a photo of the original GSD and the new one with the headlights shining down my alley. And it's like driving a car versus driving a bike.
Yeah. I think it depends where you ride, right? So if you know, your streets are fairly well lit, then you don't need it. But if you're riding in places where they conserve energy, you turn off the street lights or turn off every other, and it's quite dark.
We're
You
in
know,
America, Josh. We don't do that. But we do have dark roads because we just don't put street lights up.
yes, yes. So,
Oh, that's
fingers crossed tomorrow.
we're recording this, everyone. The you know, everything is changing in our world as we speak. Josh, from your standpoint, just maybe I'm going to start asking you this question every time we have an interview every 2 years. Where do you think the industry will be in 2 years? You know, GSD, e-bike, you know, you've been in this industry doing bike design for a long time.
I think e-bikes are an incredible part of the future. They will become more so. I think, you know, I see e-bikes, you know, in a lot of markets, they're getting to 30, 40, I think in Belgium, maybe already 50% of units sold. So I think in a lot of markets, we're going to be up at 40, 30, 40, 50, or even higher percent of all units sold will be electric. But I think, you know, the great thing that we see is that we think that transportation, you know, bikes designed for transportation are going to be a much more important part of the future. That's something that, right, you're pushing for, that we're pushing for, and I think the market is moving this way. Um, and I think it just makes sense. And you know, like I think Paris is a great example, right? The mayor, Anne Hidalgo, she's said, look, I I want Paris to be a 15-minute city. So when you live in this quarter, you should have your butcher shop and your grocer and your schools and everything that you need within a 15-minute travel distance away. And so what that means is, you know, like if you want to like live on this side of town and you expect to drive across Paris, that's just not going to happen very easily. But what we want to do is make every section of the city self-contained and livable, right? So that you can walk down the street and there's parks and there are children playing outside and it's, you know, and it's safe and you can ride your bike to the grocery store. So I think that's something that is I think people are going to see cities like Paris and go, wow, you know what? That's kind of a nice place to live. Like, wouldn't it be great? And I think, you know, I think you were having this conversation with a friend or something about like, well, what cities are like that in the US where you can cycle, you can feel safe, it's not urban sprawl, right? So I grew up in LA and 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 I hate going back there because all I do all day is think about, okay, it's like 2:15. Is it too late to leave the house now? Or now it's 2:40, 3 o'clock. Oh, I can't go across town now. I'm in LA.
Yeah.
And that's LA, and it's terrible. I remember I had a date with a friend, a college buddy. So three of us. I hadn't seen this one guy since graduation, so like 30 years ago. And so we had made, you know, plans to get together for dinner in the Valley, uh, you know, I don't know, a couple weeks in advance. And day of, you know, at 4:15, you know, so our dinner was at like 7. At 4:15, he messages us and is like, guys, I'm not going to be able to make it because traffic's like 2 hours and 45 minutes just for me to get from Santa Monica to get to Arcadia, something like that. You know, and it's the distance is, you know, normally driving time that's, you know, 50 minutes, right? But this was like now at 2:45 or 2 hours and 45 minutes, and that's traffic in LA.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I think we're seeing people, I think, and COVID is also driving people this way. It's that, look, we need to live simpler lives. Um, we need to enjoy things like clean air, uh, clean water, um, silence sometimes is not, I mean, and so we need to appreciate what we have and not just be driving towards growth at the expense of, the planet. Um, and so yeah, I think, we're so excited because, we were always seen as making these really weird contraptions. Our bikes were always these weird things, like, traditional it was road bike, mountain bike, and we just made weird stuff. And now people are realizing that, okay, that looks a little unconventional, but it works better for these things. And so I think we're going to see the market move in this direction where, you know, its function is going to be super important. And right, that makes you excited, makes us excited.
Yeah, your whole answer really summarized why I wanted to work with you and Tern, because I think it's this bigger picture than you and I helping make great bikes. It's truly, are we helping somebody's day be better and have a better life?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just for, just in our own lives, I know that there are, so I've lived in Taipei for 28 years now, but there are certain spots that we'd always drive. But now with the GSD, we bike to those exact same spots. And without the GSD, we'd be driving, right? So like, it's like our son's soccer practice is, I don't know, 10 kilometers away. And normally, we'd get the car, go on the freeway to, circle around, and we'd be there in 20 minutes. And on a GSD, it's 30. And, so every weekend now it's like, okay, soccer practice, get out the bikes, put on the seat pad, son, get in the back. And, so we literally are, but if we didn't have, like, if we said, hey, son, get on your bike and ride to soccer practice, he'd be like, Dad, I have practice. Like, I'm not gonna like ride hard for 35 minutes through traffic. So I'm not gonna do it. Right. But if I can say, just get on the back of the GSD and I'll ride you while you read your book and eat your breakfast. And he's like, okay, that's cool. But so we see it in our own lives that, when you make the right product, you change habits. And that's hard, right? Getting somebody to change their habit of, I always drive to this spot, but now you go, okay, now it's actually easier for you to bike, right? My friend's wife, driving to downtown SF, and versus riding.
Tell her I need to interview her. Yeah, it's always amazing to me. I think I look at my time as a shop owner, and so much of my success was showing that, right? Showing that you can get to school faster and easier. And it's not that you're making a sacrifice, it's actually that you're making your life better. And yeah. I always think of the first time I pulled an HSD out to try, and the transporter front rack had a bungee, and the HSD rear rack had a bungee. And I just thought to myself, like, and all your bikes come with lights and fenders and kickstands and things that for some reason like hybrids don't come with. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I can sell this bike and not feel like I'm upselling anyone, and when they need, they go to the store and they forget that they need to carry something home, the bungee's already there. And that to me was like, I'm helping the lifestyle, to your point, and making those habits instead of feeling like I'm just selling a bike that may or may not get ridden on Saturdays.
Yeah. What's funny to me when bike companies go, hey, we've got this urban bike, with no rack or fenders. You look at it, it's like, really? Like, yeah. So.
Yes. Well, Josh, thank you so much. And everybody listening or watching, I will put show notes below. The GSD will be arriving to dealers sometime in December. I don't know exactly when, but sometime in December, all the models will be slowly showing up. So look below to find your local Tern dealer so you can test ride one and see what we're talking about in all this in-depth craziness about kickstands. And Josh, thank you so much. I do look forward to life being normal so I can see you in person. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of the behind the scenes of what it takes to design and imagine a cargo bike in the space these days, and the amount of effort and energy that's put in from the Tern team to make sure that the testing and safety and our dealer network is at the forefront of our ideas and thinking. So if you would like to see show notes or have questions, please visit bikehere.com. If you're watching this, I will put all the links below for everything that Josh and I talked about in this episode. So until next time, I'm Arlie, and this is Bike Here. I hope this week you're able to bike more and worry less, and I would love to hear about it.